The fall of Shu Qi is one of the most unsettling mysteries in modern Asian entertainment because it happened without scandal, without a statement, and without a single headline announcing her disappearance. One moment she was the radiant face of international cinema, standing at Cannes beside Ho Xiao Hsian, celebrated for a performance that stunned critics around the world. The next moment, she slipped into a silence so complete that audiences across Asia were left wondering what unseen force had pushed her out. Was it the unerasable shadow of her early Category 3 past, resurfacing in a tightening political climate? Was it the industry shift after the mainland crackdowns? Or was it the quiet cost of being a Taiwanese-born global star in a system that increasingly demanded perfect alignment? Scandal Asia Files opens this case to reveal the pressures, optics, and invisible rules that shaped her silent exile. Subscribe for more hidden histories. Shu Qi's rise begins in a place the industry never expected to produce a national darling. In the mid-1990s, Hong Kong was pulling talent from every corner of Asia, and the entertainment world still operated like a chaotic marketplace where agents, producers, and magazine editors all competed to discover the next bankable face. Shu Qi arrived right in the middle of that world. Born Lin Li Hui in Taiwan, she entered the industry, carrying the kind of stigma that usually ends a career before it even begins. Her early work in Category 3 films, a genre known for erotic content, was the type of cinematic past that studios pretended not to see and audiences never forgot. At the time, it was whispered as a cautionary tale, the kind that stuck to an actress even when she tried to leave it behind. Yet the momentum around her shifted almost immediately. Directors in Hong Kong saw something beyond the label placed on her. She was cast in mainstream films faster than anyone predicted, landing commercial titles followed by roles that pushed her toward critical legitimacy. Hollywood producers in the era talked about charisma as an intangible element that could cut through any scandal. Shu Qi had exactly that. Her transition from provocative films to respected cinema was so abrupt that magazines began covering her as if she were a rising star who had never taken the difficult path that brought her there. She worked with major Hong Kong actors, built a loyal audience, and began winning industry attention. What made this period remarkable was how it shaped the contradiction that followed her for decades. Her popularity soared not in spite of her controversial beginnings, but because she transcended them, becoming a symbol of reinvention in an industry where reinvention was rarely allowed. The Hong Kong press wrote about her with fascination. Some saw her as a miracle of fast branding. Others saw her as a threat to the rigid hierarchy that decided who counted as a legitimate star. Her early years were defined by the sense that she was always being tested. Every new project carried the question of whether she would be embraced as a serious actress or dragged back into the shadow of her past. Online forums across Taiwan, Hong Kong, and later mainland China constantly revived her old filmography with judgment that followed her longer than it followed her male co-stars. Still, she kept moving forward. The late 1990s gave her the first wave of critical recognition. She appeared in productions that allowed her to show emotional range rather than rely on image. Filmmakers in Hong Kong often described her as instinctive, one of the rare performers who could adapt instantly to different genres. She began receiving nominations and awards, slowly shedding the stigma that had once dominated her public identity. This transformation was not just professional, it was strategic. By choosing the right projects and accepting the scrutiny without confrontation, she rewrote the narrative around herself. The early 2000s marked the moment where she crossed the threshold from controversial newcomer to established leading actress. Casting directors no longer saw her as a risk, but as a guarantee of both commercial draw and artistic credibility. Her roles expanded across romantic films, action titles, and dramatic projects, making her one of the most versatile actresses in the region. Even as Hong Kong cinema entered a period of transition after the handover, Shu Qi remained in demand. Her presence symbolized a different kind of star, unpolished but authentic, glamorous yet grounded, and constantly evolving. This period also cemented her status across Asia. Audiences in Taiwan embraced her success. Hong Kong saw her as one of its brightest exports. Mainland viewers, through growing distribution channels, started recognizing her face long before she fully entered their domestic market. Amid this acclaim, however, the tension beneath her success never completely disappeared. The entertainment world in Asia has a long memory, and the internet age amplified every article, every early photograph, every headline that had once criticized her origins. Even as she stood on award stages, her name still carried associations that mainland regulators and conservative sectors of the industry viewed as inconvenient. These pressures were subtle at first, more like an unspoken rule than a formal barrier. Studios with heavy mainland investment became cautious. Marketing teams had to consider whether her background would provoke backlash. These concerns rarely surfaced publicly, but they shaped decisions in ways the audience never saw. Despite these obstacles, Shu Qi continued to climb. By the time she approached the mid-2000s, she had become exactly what early critics said she could never be: a respected actress with regional dominance and international potential. Her story during this era is a reminder of how fragile and unfair the path can be for women in the industry. She rebuilt her identity with discipline, talent, and extraordinary poise, yet the shadow of her past lingered as a tool that others could use whenever convenient. Her rise in this period is both triumphant and precarious, a foundation strong enough to support global fame, but vulnerable to the political and cultural storms that were waiting just ahead. The next phase of Shu Qi's career unfolded during a turbulent time in the Chinese-speaking film world, when regional politics, media consolidation, and cultural expectations all began tightening at once. By the early 2000s, she had already become a recognizable name across Asia, but the real turning point came when she stepped into projects that carried international credibility. Her collaborations with major directors deepened, and her performances began drawing attention not just from audiences, but from critics at the highest levels of the festival circuit. The momentum built steadily until it culminated in her work with Hou Xiaoxian, one of the most influential directors in the Chinese-language film sphere. The Assassin became a pivotal project. It premiered to global acclaim and won Hou the Best Director award at Cannes, a milestone that placed Shu Qi at the center of serious world cinema. Her performance was praised as both restrained and devastating, the kind of role that solidifies an actress's reputation as more than just a commercial figure. For a brief moment, she stood as one of the rare stars who had conquered both mainstream popularity and artistic prestige. This international validation created a new set of expectations. As mainland China's film industry expanded, stars who could bring global legitimacy were in high demand, and Shu Qi had exactly the kind of appeal that made her valuable. She had a pan-Asian fan base, Hong Kong roots, Taiwanese identity, and Western festival recognition. But these same qualities also placed her at the intersection of competing pressures. As China's entertainment world grew more centralized and politically sensitive, artists with complex cross-regional backgrounds found themselves navigating a landscape where visibility came with stricter scrutiny. This had nothing to do with talent. It was about optics. By the mid-2010 seconds, cross-strait relations were tense enough that public figures with strong Taiwan connections were automatically viewed through a political lens. Shu Qi never made provocative statements, never courted controversy, and avoided the political spotlight entirely. Yet the system increasingly evaluated actors not only for what they did, but for what they represented. During this era, she accepted fewer mainland-centric blockbusters and focused more on selective projects. Officially, nothing seemed wrong. She was still respected, still appearing at festivals, and still regarded as a major figure. But industry watchers noticed the shift. Online speculation, clearly labeled as speculation, suggested she was no longer the first choice for high-visibility roles backed by state-linked studios. Producers in mainland China tended to favor actresses whose public profiles aligned perfectly with national narratives. Shu Qi, with her mix of international prestige and Taiwan identity, simply did not fit the evolving template. Even so, she maintained a dignified presence. She worked on films outside the mainland system, accepted roles that matched her artistic standards, and refused to rely on sensational publicity to stay relevant. Her silence was never a retreat. It was a refusal to participate in the headline-driven chaos of celebrity culture. Her marriage to Stephen Fung in 2016 added another layer to the public fascination around her life. It was a widely celebrated union between two beloved figures in the industry. The timing, however, coincided with subtle but noticeable shifts in mainland entertainment politics. None of these changes were directed at her personally, but the landscape around her transformed at a speed the audience didn't see. New regulations tightened creative control. Casting decisions became more centralized. Endorsements required risk assessments that weighed not only star power, but political texture. Even though Shu Qi had no scandals, no public missteps, and no statements that could be interpreted as sensitive, her early career history and her cross-regional background made studios cautious at a time when the threshold for caution was rising. As mainland China entered the post-2018 era of stricter oversight, following high-profile tax scandals and celebrity investigations, the industry became even more risk-averse. Shu Qi, now an established icon rather than an emerging star, found herself outside the new priority system. Younger actresses who could be shaped into politically neutral, highly controlled public figures took center stage. Platforms wanted faces with clean, uncomplicated narratives. Investors wanted stars who aligned with evolving national aesthetics. Regulators preferred artists who reflected the direction of state messaging. None of this meant Shu Qi was rejected or punished. She simply did not fit the model. The absence of offers from mainland blockbusters was not a fall from grace. It was the consequence of a structural shift that sidelined anyone who did not match the new formula. This period is where her silence gained meaning. Fans wondered why she appeared less in major releases and more in selective or non-mainland projects. The answer can be found in how soft pressure operates. No bans, no announcements, no blacklist. Just the quiet retreat of opportunities. Decisions are made behind closed doors. Scripts stop arriving. Endorsements move to younger faces. Platforms choose other leads. For Shu Qi, this invisible shift was enough to reposition her career without ever forcing her into conflict. She simply redirected her energy towards spaces where she retained creative control and personal freedom. Her prestige remained intact. Her reputation stayed clean. Her legacy continued to grow, yet the spotlight she once commanded in the mainland market slowly dimmed, not by scandal, but by the silent machinery of the industry reshaping itself around new rules. Through this entire era, she never expressed frustration publicly, never made accusations, and never attempted to reclaim relevance through controversy. Her composure became its own statement. She understood that the forces surrounding her had nothing to do with her as an individual. She was navigating a system that had changed its expectations faster than it could acknowledge them. Her path in these years reveals how fragile even the strongest reputations can become when political climate, cultural identity, and industry reshuffling collide. In the world that emerged after 2016, Shu Qi's brilliance was still recognized, but the environment no longer allowed her to shine in the same way. The years after 2016 marked a turning point that reshaped Shu Qi's public presence in ways that were subtle but unmistakable. Her sudden quietness did not come from scandal or decline. It came from the slow tightening of an industry where silence can erase someone just as effectively as controversy. As mainland entertainment entered a new era of control, the system developed a softer, far more sophisticated method of sidelining artists. Nothing was ever written. Nothing was officially announced, but the effects were unmistakable. High-profile scripts that once arrived without pause were no longer sent her way. Endorsement inquiries shifted to younger, more controllable faces. Projects with state-linked backing favored actresses who reflected the ideological clarity the market demanded. Shu Qi's background was simply too complex. The early films that once showcased her resilience were now considered inconvenient history in a climate obsessed with sanitized public images. Her Taiwan roots, while never politicized by her, made studios cautious. Her international acclaim, once seen as a badge of honor, became a complicating factor in a system that preferred predictability over global recognition. This shift was not a punishment directed at her. It was the byproduct of broader structural changes. After several high-profile tax scandals and investigations destabilized the entertainment ecosystem, regulators imposed tighter oversight on casting, production, messaging, and artist conduct. Risk assessments extended beyond current behavior. They now included origin, background, and even past associations. Shu Qi's career contained elements that no longer aligned with the new standards. None of these elements were problematic in themselves, but together they placed her in a category the industry had grown wary of: stars who could not be reshaped to fit the newly constructed narrative of national image. As producers adapted to these expectations, they gravitated towards safer choices. Shu Qi's career momentum slowed, not because she fell short, but because the environment around her no longer supported her presence at the center of mainland cinema. At the same time, her deliberate personal choices reinforced the perception that she was stepping back. She became more selective with roles. She focused on personal life, health concerns, and projects outside the mainland spotlight. She displayed no urgency to chase visibility, no attempts to force herself back into the conversation. Her silence began to appear intentional, a conscious decision to avoid the exhaustion of navigating an increasingly unpredictable system. She had worked for 2 decades under intense public scrutiny. The rise of social media only magnified this, with every post and comment triggering waves of debate. Instead of feeding into the cycle, she chose to disengage calmly. Her social platforms reflected her state of mind: brief updates, moments of humor, small glimpses of daily life, all without the desperation to maintain relevance. This approach, rare for an actress of her stature, protected her from becoming a lightning rod for the online culture wars that dominated the era. Her absence from major productions did not mean she was forgotten. In fact, it enhanced her mystique. Fans across Asia interpreted her silence as a form of self-preservation. Industry insiders described her as someone who understood timing better than anyone. She stepped aside before the environment could turn hostile, before her reputation could be weaponized, and before the industry's shifting tides could pull her into controversies she never asked for. Even rumors about her retreat were handled with grace. When internet speculation tried to fill the vacuum, it failed to gain traction because there was no scandal to anchor it. Her career was clean. Her conduct was unproblematic. Her disappearance from the mainland spotlight felt less like an exile and more like a quiet refusal to conform to demands she had never subscribed to. As the years passed, Shu Qi maintained relevance through select international collaborations, guest appearances, and endorsements that aligned with her values. She remained a respected figure in Taiwan and Hong Kong, where her legacy was seen as something earned through perseverance and artistry rather than manufactured fame. She supported younger actresses, uplifted peers, and avoided public feuds entirely. Her reputation matured into something the industry rarely produces anymore: an icon who survived the most unforgiving parts of the entertainment machine without losing dignity or authenticity. Even when the question arose about why she no longer appeared in flagship mainland films, there was no narrative of decline. Instead, there was curiosity, a sense that the silence itself held meaning. Shu Qi's story ends not with downfall, but with a paradox. She achieved everything an actress could hope for. She conquered Hong Kong cinema at its peak. She built a regional fan base that adored her. She earned global artistic recognition through The Assassin. She influenced a generation of actresses who saw her as proof that reinvention was possible. Yet, at the height of her cultural impact, the system around her changed in ways that left no space for someone with her background, complexity, and history. Rather than fight for relevance in an environment that demanded conformity, she chose silence, not defeat, not disappearance. Silence as protection, silence as autonomy, silence as the final evolution of an actress who had already proven everything. Her retreat from the mainland spotlight becomes clearer in this light. She was never broken. What truly broke was the illusion that talent alone could carry someone through an industry shaped as much by unspoken politics as by performance. Shu Qi's story is not a downfall, but a warning about how the entertainment system can quietly erase even its brightest icons. No scandal destroyed her. No public enemy targeted her. The industry simply changed its rules, and she chose dignity over confrontation. Her silence became her shield, her retreat a declaration of autonomy. In the end, she remains one of the few stars who walked away without being broken. For more cases where fame, power, and politics collide behind closed doors, subscribe to Scandal Asia Files.